Very well. I am Michelle Reinen. I will be facilitating the Blue Ribbon Commission on Veteran Opportunity. Welcome to our first meeting and thank you for being here. As just indicated, this session is being recorded and this is a public meeting. And to begin, I'd like to turn things over to Department of Veteran Affairs Secretary Kohler.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today, for volunteering your time to the present and future of Wisconsin veterans and their families. In our lifetimes, Wisconsin's veteran population has changed dramatically. With trends expected to continue, we may need to rethink veteran services entirely. Today, the largest group of living veterans served during the Vietnam War, nearly 40% of those who have served. By 2045, the federal VA estimates the number of veterans will drop by half, while also becoming far more diverse. With these changing demographics, we will face unique challenges. Today's presentations highlight how this will significantly change funding mechanisms while we still need to maintain vital services that our veterans have earned. There are still many challenges we must face in the present. Mental health care continues to be an ongoing issue, especially as veterans were disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm incredibly proud of WDVA's suicide prevention efforts. Programs like our Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program have literally saved lives. But one death by suicide is too many, and we must continue to be diligent and compassionate in reaching struggling veterans. Housing insecurity, long-term care, employment opportunities. Everyone on this commission knows we can and must do more to serve our veterans, especially as they are an incredibly valuable resource for our state. Wisconsin should not just take care of existing veterans, but we should be top of mind destination for those who want to thrive in civilian life. Much of this commission will be focused on the future. But the stories of the past are also vital to understanding who we are as a state. Our Wisconsin Veterans Museum is a world-class institution housing thousands upon thousands of artifacts and oral histories. I would be remiss not to encourage thinking about its future to maintain our past. And when we talk about remembering, I also want to remind everyone of our 3 state cemeteries. They are pristinely maintained and provide services to ensure every veteran is laid to rest with respect and dignity. Even at the end of life, we should not forget what we owe to veterans. Our vital partners are the incredible nonprofits and veteran service organizations, many represented here today. Wisconsin ranks 8th in the country for number of veteran serving organizations, with more than 1,700 nonprofits serving veterans in our state. Again, to all of you here today, thank you for being a member of this commission, for lending your time and expertise that we might better serve our state's veterans and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kohler. And now I'd like to introduce for additional welcome remarks, Department of Administration Secretary Designee, Kathy Blumenfeld.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you, Secretary Kohler, and thank you to all of you out there that have agreed to serve on this commission. Many of you here are veterans yourselves, so I want to thank you personally for your service to our country. We owe you all a debt of gratitude. Your time and experience are critical to the commission because you understand the challenges our veterans face when returning to civilian life. And you can provide us with crucial insight and feedback on opportunities for improvement and coordination. Each of us on this commission has a personal connection to the issues because each of us has either served or likely knows someone, a family member or friend who has served. For me, that connection is my 96-year-old, soon to be 97 this month, father-in-law, Saul Blumenfeld, who grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin. He and his two brothers, and quite frankly, most of his high school class, eagerly signed up to serve. He served as a Seabee in the Second World War and spent a majority of his time in the South Pacific. He often shares stories and experience of his time in service with passion and pride, and kept in close contact with those he served with for decades following his service. When I think of the work ahead of us on this commission, I think of Sal and so many other Wisconsin veterans and what they need right now. As Governor Evers has said, our servicemen and servicewomen often face unique challenges after they return to civilian life. The last 2 years have been especially difficult in a time of with an increase of time of isolation and uncertainty. Some of our veterans right now still struggle with access to the housing they need, employment they need, and the health care they need. Through budget investments made by the administration over the last several years, we've worked hard to address these challenges, but we know there is more that can be done. And that is why we are here today, to let our veterans know that we have your back and are committed to honoring their service by ensuring that we have pathways for employment, housing, healthcare, and other vital services in our state. So I'm here to listen and learn from all of you in the coming months and see how working together we can support our veterans here at home. So thank you all for all that you do and the opportunity to be on this commission. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Michelle.
Thank you, Secretary Designee. I appreciate everyone being here today, and I'm looking forward to facilitating these future meetings. And to get us started this morning, we're just going to go over a few basic pieces of information to get us all settled in, if you will. It's like learning where the exits are if we were in a room in person here. So to move forward, we're going to cover the Zoom basics, what we're going to be using in Zoom this morning and in future meetings, some meeting ground rules, and then we'll take that roll call while doing introductions of all the commission members. As it relates to the Zoom basics, the features we'll be using today are the mute of your microphone and the unmute, of course. And so you'll find that in the bottom left corner, the little microphone symbol. If you're not familiar with Zoom, we've spent a couple years here now, so I'm going to speed through these. We're going to use video when we have our discussion portion and do our introductions, because we do want to get to know each other as we'll be working together today and in future meetings. And then we're also going to use the chat box. That's that little cartoon balloon, if you will. It'll pop up the chat box, and you can have that feed going throughout the meeting to monitor conversation, but it's also where I really want you to post your questions when they pop into your head as they relate to our presentations, because we will be taking questions at the end of 3 different presenters. So I will remind you to pop those questions in there, but we'll be using that chat feature. And then also the raise your hand feature today. So when we're having that group discussion, we can just try and not to step over one another. So you can use the raise your hand feature as well. And I'll just be calling on individuals, hopefully in the order of which you've raised your hand, but please forgive me if that doesn't happen exactly as those hands raised. Next, those meeting ground rules. We want to have that respectful communication, taking turns, actively listening to one another, and receiving that information, absorbing that information that we're hearing from our presenters. Attendance and participation is really very important, because we have a lot of work to do in just a short number of meetings. And so we will give you advance notice of those meetings and preview a few of the dates here today as well. And we just ask, attendance and participation. And we do understand schedule issues. So please let us know if you won't be able to attend ahead of time. And we do ask if you can, silence those cell phones for this 2 hours, turn off that email. If you can just focus on this meeting and not multitask. It certainly is a habit that I am guilty of on a regular basis, but we'll be concentrated here for these 2 hours just on this topic for this day. Creativity and open-mindedness. Come ready to receive information and come up with those new ideas, receive what others are saying and see how we can work and form those ideas together. And then preparation. Well, everybody loves homework, but we're going to have some pre-work where there'll be information set out ahead of time, some e-binders, some reference materials and things that will help the presentations move forward and the learning move forward. So you'll be receiving those ahead of the meetings along with the agendas as you did for this meeting. So hopefully everyone can agree to these ground rules and nothing is a big surprise here. Now we're going to move directly into our introduction aspect, and then I'm going to cover some quick process, what things are going to look like, and in that preview of the agenda and the future meetings as well. But we want to know who's in the room today. There's been announcements, so you've been able to read that, but we want to see your face and say hello. But of course, our meeting's only 2 hours, so we're going to do this on a speed intro, if you will, 30 seconds or less. If I'll call out names, if you can be sure your camera's on, if you have the bandwidth and capacity to support that for the hello, indicate who you are, the organization you represent as it relates to the commission, and your years of military service, if you have that as well, or your relation to that. But in that 30 seconds or less, and we'll just speed through that introduction here. So again, just because this is also our roll call, even though we've heard remarks, we're going to start from the top so everyone can get familiar, because each meeting will go through this in the same fashion. If you're unable to unmute your microphone and say hello and do your introductions, please post it in the chat, but we'd love to hear voices at this point in time as well. So we'll start again with Department of Veteran Affairs, Secretary Mary Kohler.
Mary Kohler, Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm a retired Navy captain. I served 28 years on active duty.
Thank you. And Department of Administration, Secretary Designee Kathy Blumenfeld.
I am here and present and ready to serve.
State Senator Jeff Smith.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I represent the 31st Senate District, which represents Eau Claire, Pepin, Pierce, Dunn, Trempealeau, Buffalo, and Jackson counties, western Wisconsin. My father, like Secretary Blumenfeld, was 97 years old and served in the World War II in the Pacific, and I'm very proud of that. In fact, even though that's just background, I'm not really in my office today, but in the background I have his uniform hanging in my office, in fact, so I'm really proud of that.
Very nice. Thank you, Senator. State Senator Joan Ballwig. In for her today is Amanda Graham.
Hi, I'm Amanda. Senator Ballwig's at a different council right now, but I'm happy to step in for her. She has the 14th Senate District, which also covers the Veterans Home at King.
Thank you. State Representative Deb Andraka.
Hi, I'm Deb Andraka. I represent the 23rd Assembly District, which is the northern suburbs of Milwaukee. My great-grandfather served in World War I. My grandfather served in World War II, and I am very happy to be here. I was elected on a gun safety platform and have been working on suicide prevention specifically. So it's a particular interest of mine, and I am thrilled to be among all of you.
Thank you. Bridget Esser. Bridget, if you're speaking, if you can unmute your microphone.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, perfect. I'm Bridget Esser. I am the legislative liaison for the Wisconsin Department of Military Affairs. I represent the Wisconsin National Guard in the state legislature and the United States Congress.
Great, thank you.
I'm
Al
happy to be
LaBelle.
here.
Oh, sorry. Al LaBelle.
Hi, I'm Al LaBelle. I'm U.S. Navy, Vietnam, 1967, active duty, 2 years, 13 days. I'm here as a DAV, or Disabled American Veterans. In Wisconsin, I am known as the Benefit Protection Team Leader, or basically a legislative liaison. On a national level, I serve on the DAV interim legislation committee, and I serve as the chair.
Thank you, welcome. Nathan Gear.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you. My name is Nathan Gear. I'm a retired Army, served in the Army and then retired from the Wisconsin Army National Guard. I currently am the department adjutant for the American Legion Department of Wisconsin. We have about 50,000 members, about another 25,000 members of our auxiliaries and sons and our Legion Riders Association. We have about 500 posts across the state of Wisconsin, and I wear about 24 different hats in this organization. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Corey Geisler.
Morning, Corey Geisler, served 7 years, U.S. Army. Currently serve as the state commander for the Veterans of Foreign Wars, representing the 249 posts and 25,000 members that are spread across our 10 districts throughout the state. So looking forward to being here and looking forward to this.
Jim Strong. All right, we're going to pass because I did not see Jim's name in the list. And we'll move forward to Greg Dufek.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Dufek. I served in the United States Marine Corps. I'm currently the Tribal Veteran Service Officer for the Stockbridge Muncie community. I have just over 30 years in health and human services. I'm glad to be here and proud to be able to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Rock Larson. Rock, if you're speaking, you're on mute. Or we can't hear you. All right, we are unable to hear you, Rock, if you are present. So we don't have any audio coming in. If you are able to use the chat feature to say hello, that'd be great. But we're unable to hear any audio from you this morning. All right, so then we'll move forward to Yolanda Medina.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yolanda Medina. As you can see by my Harrier back there, I was a Marine aircraft technician in the Marine Corps. My husband and I served together. I have 15 years in higher education, 10 years serving military and veteran students in supporting veterans benefits, mental health and wellness, as well as women and Latinx issues. I'm now at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I've been here for 3 years, and I look forward to being part of this committee.
Thank you. And for everyone, if your chat's open, things aren't working for Rock in the audio, but he is the CVSO Associate President. So we have that. Matthew Schroeder.
Morning, I'm Matthew Schroeder, Director of Military and Veteran Services at Edgewood College. Been here since 2011, so got quite a bit of experience under my belt working with student veterans, helping them get acclimated back to the academic environment, but also getting them acquainted with different resources throughout the state, whether it's through the WDVA or with CVSOs. I'm also a veteran. So I look forward to working with this committee, and I'm happy to see some familiar names and faces.
And then we move to Carolyn Morgan.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn Morgan. I am not retired from the National Guard. I spent 16 total years in the Wisconsin National Guard, active duty, and then came back to the National Guard, and that was my last duty station. My father served at Truex Field, I served at Truex Field, and my son served at Truex Field. I worked for Tammy Baldwin at one time and also WDVA. I was the Women Veterans Outreach Coordinator for the state, and I am now volunteering wherever volunteers are needed. Great to be here.
Great, thank you. Ronald Adams.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I served 33 years in all branches of the Army, active duty, National Guard, active guard, federal technician, and the Army Reserves. I retired from the Army Reserves during the pandemic. I'm an executive at Northwestern Mutual. My father served in World War II. I served in Desert Storm. 2 of my children have served as well. So I'm all things veterans. I served on the board of the Wisconsin Veterans Network, the Milwaukee Homeless Veterans Initiative on their boards. And however I can help a veteran, I'll do it.
Great, thank you. Nathaniel Millsap.
Good morning, everyone. I do go by Nate, so please feel free. I served 5 years active duty as an intelligence officer in the Navy. I received a military retirement or medical disability retirement from the Navy. I have a blood clotting disorder, and apparently I was the first person in the military that they ever discovered with it. So they didn't know what to do with me. So I now build ships here in Marinette. We build the littoral combat ship, the frigate for the U.S. Navy. And I serve on the board of the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation. And I'm a past president of the Navy League of the U.S. Council here in Northeastern Wisconsin. Passion for community service, and a number of family members historically from World War II through present day in the military.
Thank you, Nate. Scott Schultz.
Hello, everybody. I'm up here in the northern driftless area in Osseo and the beautiful hillsides out on a little farm. I'm a retired longtime print and broadcast journalist, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, discharged as a sergeant. And I'll tell you that having the moniker Sergeant Schultz never gets old, let me tell you. One of the things I do, I've done for the past 20 years, I also founded, besides my journalism work, founded a nonprofit organization, the Heartbeat Center for Writing, Literacy, and the Arts. And we do a lot of work with veterans. We have a project called Veterans Expressing Themselves, where we focus on getting veterans to write their stories, to express themselves, whatever those stories might be, and use other art forms to do that. Very active in activities over at the High Ground Veterans Memorial Park, and I'm very honored to be part of this group.
Great, thank you. And Jesse Ehrenfeld.
Good morning. Let me apologize for my voice. I still am a little bit hoarse from a cold that my whole family's been getting over, but delighted to be here. I'm a physician at the Medical College of Wisconsin, where I run the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin Endowment, the state's largest health philanthropy. I'm a former Navy commander and a long line of service in my family, going all the way back to an ancestor who served under George Washington at the Revolutionary War. Delighted to be a part of this group, and hopefully I can contribute in ways that will be useful.
Great, thank you. And Ying Bang.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ying Bang. I'm actually the corporate HR manager for ORC Industries. Currently, I also serve with the 327 Engineering Company in Unalaska, Wisconsin here. I just recently returned from my deployment to the Middle East, And so my goal here is actually today, after this meeting here, I'm going to be having an on-site visit with the local Toma VA touring our facility here and working with the disabled veterans that are in need of work. And so I look forward to working with everybody here on this group. Thank you.
Welcome. Natalie Eisensee.
Yes, good morning. I'm Natalie Eisensee. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I served on active duty from 2000 to 2005, which included a deployment to Iraq for the initial invasion in 2003. My paid employment is at WPS Health Solutions, where I'm the manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we consider veterans a significant portion of our DEI work, as well as lots of other groups as well. I am active in the veteran community in the Madison area. I'm a volunteer leader with Team RWB, Team Red, White, and Blue. Also part of the Dane County Veterans Service Commission and a board member of VetScan. Definitely excited to be here and happy to be part of the conversation.
Thank you. And Jason Maloney.
Morning, everybody. I'm coming to you from the Wisconsin shore of Lake Superior. I'm a retired Army Major, branch armor. I served 11 years with the Wisconsin Army National Guard, 10 years with the Army Reserve, and 2 years as a mobilized reservist serving with U.S. Central Command in the U.S. and in the Middle East. I'm also a retired public educator and a retired federal program manager. I serve on the Wisconsin Board of Veterans Affairs and also the Bayfield County Public Housing Commission.
Right. Well, stay bundled up there, and thank you for being here. And Sherry Swakowski.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I served 35 years, almost all of it with the Wisconsin Army National Guard. I'm a career infantry soldier, and since retiring back as the J1, the Director of Manpower and Personnel in 2004, I went on to serve at Fort Belvoir, several years as a senior analyst at the Pentagon, and lastly retired as the HR director for the Forest Service. And subsequent to that, I've been an advocate for the LGBT community. I represent several organizations, including the Modern Military Association of America. And I apologize for any of the gnawing or the chewing noises in the background. That's my 15-month-old golden retriever, Maddie.
Welcome to Manny as well. Thank you for being here. And we're going to circle back just for a minute. Rock's changed microphone, so let's see if we can hear that voice. Rock Larson. Still not hearing anything, Rock. So we will work on that tech with you offline, but please use the chat function today as well, so we can continue to hear your comments, and I'll represent those. All right. So thank you for those introductions and welcome everyone. It's exciting to meet you and be working together. What we're going to be striving for, what this commission is going to look like and what success in action is going to look like, what we're going to do. Examine issues that affect Wisconsin veterans and their families from many angles and viewpoints. We'll be hearing from different presenters and then we'll be hearing from all task force members and seeking their input and ideas. And again, we'll have a question and discussion portion at the end of today's meeting and be building those into each meeting so we can hear those voices. Researching proposed solutions to address the issues outlined in the executive order that Governor Evers issued, developing sound recommendations for how Wisconsin can sustainably support the state's veterans population, and then producing a body of knowledge for Governor Evers and others to consider and use to address how to best serve veterans in Wisconsin. So we just wanted to give you this high-level overview of the path and the journey we'll be taking together over these meetings. We'll be examining and listening and hearing from individuals and each other, again, researching information, and all towards the goal of developing these recommendations. So mark your calendars. We want to give you a preview of some dates here. And again, you'll get the agendas and you'll get notice of this information, but we have this first meeting today until 11. And then we'll be meeting virtually again in May 25th. All of these you'll notice are 9 to 11, a 2-hour block. We'll be covering long-term care is going to be the agenda focus for that second meeting. And that third meeting will be June 22nd. Education, job training, credentialing, and employment being the agenda focus items. And then meeting 4, July 20th, yet to be determined exactly that topic at this point in time. But we'll reflect on the executive order and what we're hearing and where we may need to do more research and examination. And meeting 5 at this point is scheduled for August 24th, accessible housing, homelessness, and housing insecurity. And then based on the progress and what we've heard and the discussions, there could be, a few more meetings added on here, but we want to plot those first 5 for everybody. So you know what to expect as it relates to those different meetings and moving forward there. At this point in time, the next meeting will be virtual. The question in the chat, will all the meetings be virtual? The next meeting for sure will be virtual. We're going to examine it case by case, what is best. The anticipation is that these will be virtual. We'll see if we can work in an in-person meeting or where and when that will happen. But we'll be using that Zoom platform. So get comfy in the room because that will be the dominating meeting place. Now, what to expect for today? We want to focus on today's meeting and the rest of the time that we have together here today. We've gone through, a good chunk of the meeting already with our welcome remarks and introductions and ground rules and having those member introductions. And next we'll be moving into a little bit more of the administrative business just to make sure we are all in the same place and make everyone aware. Some baselines by hearing from Sarah Larson, the General Counsel, as it relates to public official responsibilities. And then we'll be having kind of a panel where we're hearing from 3 presenters, one after another, if you'll think of it as a panel, learning about the Veterans Trust Fund. And then we'll have that question and discussion portion and then highlight the next steps and adjourn at 11 there. We'll also have a couple of special guests that are providing testimonials as one of the panel members' presentation. So that will be great to hear from individuals. And another administrative thing, if you haven't checked it out yet, this is where you can stay in tune and find information, the website. We do have the Blue Ribbon Commission on the Department of Veteran Affairs website. So go there, you'll find meeting agendas posted. Post-meeting, we'll have the PowerPoint information, recording, so dva.wi.gov. And then you just click the About WDVA up in the upper portion in the left panel of the website, if you will. And then when the page comes up, you'll just see on the side, there'll be the blue panel and you can hit the Blue Ribbon Commission. And then this portion will show up and down below will be the agenda. I was there this morning, nice and slick, easy to get to. So check it out and stay in tune there and monitor progress. In addition to the website, we do have an email address. So if you have questions between meetings or information you'd like to convey to the co-chairs or any of the behind the scenes workers at DVA and DOA, please submit those emails directly to the email address veteranopportunity@wisconsin.gov. I'll post that again at the very end. One of the last slides so you can see it and serve as a reminder, but veteranopportunity@wisconsin.gov is where you can submit questions in between meetings because we want to be sure, given that this is a public venue, that we're sharing information appropriately. And so with that in mind, we're going to move into our first presentation, a little bit more of that administrative work, the ethics overview for the commission members that will be provided by Chad Copling, who's the general counsel for the department with 27 years of private and public sector legal experience. And he manages the Office of Legal Counsel and provides counsel to the Office of the Secretary and the department's leaders. He's also a veteran with 21 years of military service and is currently serves as the command judge advocate for the 157th Maneuver Enhancement Brigade, his second tour for the Wisconsin Army National Guard. So I now turn the microphone over to Chad.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle, for that introduction. Can you hear me okay? Is my volume good?
Yeah, we're getting just a touch of feedback. It just went away. So
Okay. So a warm congratulations to all of the committee members for your appointments. What a prestigious position to be in to influence directly veterans issues in the state of Wisconsin. And I compliment you all for reaching this status. As public officials, there are certain laws that apply to you, and I'm just going to briefly hit 3 areas. The first is going to be public meetings. The second is going to be public records. And the third is going to be ethics for public officials. So these laws were designed to ensure transparency in government so that the public can directly observe and participate in things affecting the public, and in particular this committee. So first of all, public meetings. I'll refer you to Wisconsin statute section 19.82. And a public meeting is essentially a properly noticed convening of the members of the public for the charge of which you're supposed to gather to discuss the public issues. It needs to provide the public with advance notice of the time, location, and the agenda of the issues to be discussed or acted on. So with that provision under the law, I would caution you all to have any off-record, off-meeting conversations with each other. It's very important that you conduct the business of the commission only during your meeting times. And you certainly can facilitate ideas to the chairperson of this committee where it can be socialized at future meetings. But we don't want to get into email conversations or meeting members for lunch to get afoul of these laws that require the business of your committee to be done during the publicly noticed meeting. The second issue is going to be open records. So all documents that you would receive with respect to this position, whether it's an email or a letter or any type of voicemail or recording, anything that could be deemed a record, and the definition is very broad, you're going to want to retain this for the duration of your committee period, but then for an additional 6 years afterwards. And there's going to be the ability for the Department of Administration to take any records that you accumulate during this position in the event there is a public record request from the public or the media. So it's very important that you don't delete those emails, retain those emails. If you're getting letters from the public or from other parties, organizations, and so forth, it's going to be very important that you retain those. And at some point in time, there'll be a mechanism where you can share those records with DOA, again, for those record requests. The third issue is ethics. And essentially, with ethics, I'll point you to Wisconsin statute section 19.45. And the golden rule is that you can't use your position, your status as a committee member, as a public official, to benefit yourself, your family, or affiliated organizations. This would include someone giving you a gift, for example, Packers tickets, tickets to the Badger game, tickets to the Bucks game, that you're receiving solely because of your position on this committee. These could be construed as a conflict of interest, an attempt to influence you in such a way that could benefit inappropriately a third party. So the bottom line is, if you have the opportunity to receive a gift or a benefit or a perk, or someone's asking to influence your decision with respect to your position here, you're going to want to have a red flag arise in your mind. And DOA has attorneys that can assist, and the Ethics Commission will be a number, in a slide, I believe it's the next slide, that you can call with questions. I'm certainly available as well if there are any questions with that. I'll give a number really quickly. The Ethics Commission, it is 608-266-8123, and you have it in the slide as well. So again, I thank you for your service to the state and in assisting our agency with assessing how we can improve the benefits and programs for our Wisconsin veterans and their families. So Michelle, that is all. Subject to questions, that is all I have for my brief presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions while we have him available with any concerns that you may have or any information you want to inquire about outside of going to the ethics contact information that we have posted here, which again will be shared through the PowerPoints with you. Just give you a moment to raise hands or chat something in. It's a great overview and pretty baseline, but important to note. So we will move forward, not hearing any additional questions or any questions, sorry. So next we're going to move into our panel of speakers and really now dive into the subjects here, why we're all gathered as a commission here today. So the Veterans Trust Fund. First, we're going to hear from Jim Parker. He serves as the administrator of the Division of Enterprise Services with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Oops, sorry. Then we're going to hear from Donald Placidi. He's the Division Administrator of the Division of Veterans Benefits with the Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs. He'll be covering the funded programs, services, and benefits and provide those guest speaker testimonials as well, while Jim will be covering the overview and history of the trust fund. And then we're going to hear from Brian Ponke, the Division Administrator of Executive Budget and Finance with the Department of Administration. So again, we're just going to move one presentation into another. They'll hand the mic off to each other and provide those testimonials. So please post any question that comes to mind for you in the chat. You know, indicate who the question is for, whether it's for Jim, Donald, or Brian, and we will then facilitate those at the end of the full panel presentation. So with that, Jim, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to start off by apologizing for my 1980s profile picture. I'll have to get to work on that soon. My goal this morning as the CFO is to give you an overview and history of the Veterans Trust Fund. And I'd like to just kind of start off with just sort of a broad statement about the VTF and how it was created in 1961 and how it supports most of the grant and other programs operated by the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. And I think the most important part of this slide is to point out that it does not support our state veterans' homes. Next slide. Now, these are some of the examples of some of the largest WDVF VTF cost items. So it's providing support for the Wisconsin Veterans Museums, the 3 Wisconsin Veterans Memorial Cemeteries, the Veterans Outreach and Recovery Program, or VORP. It provides assistance to veterans in need, grants such as the grants for the County Veterans Service Offices, Tribal Veterans Service Offices, Veterans Service Organizations, and Camp American Legion. And of course, it also provides all the administrative costs to the department for supporting these programs. So as you can see, it takes care of a broad swath of activities in our department and is a very important fund. Now, during its inception, the VTF was created by combining some dedicated revenues like special taxes, liquor and income surtaxes, and it actually goes back to the pre-World War II, where there was a small balance, and then in 1943 a surtax for income was started, and then in 1947 to 1951 the liquor tax was added. Who would have thought Wisconsin would have revenues from a liquor tax? It actually brought in $18 million. So the loan programs administered by WDVA have been one of the most heavily relied upon revenue sources for VTF. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those a little further down. But from 1991 to 1997, various funds were used to help establish these different loan programs to benefit Wisconsin veterans. And when I talk about these loan programs, I'm talking about mortgage loan programs, I'm talking about home improvement loan programs, personal loan programs, different kinds of loan packages that the department has been able to offer over the years. Next slide, please. Oh, so there it is. The WDVA loan program revenues began to decline. And what we were finding is that each year our expenditures were exceeding our revenues by about $3 million. And this had been happening since 1993. And in 2018, the remaining WDVA loan portfolio was actually sold. And that's for a number of reasons. And I'll get into those a little bit down further. But the prolonged reduction in revenues to the VTF prompted the legislature to request a 10-year solvency plan. Oops. Prompted a 10-year solvency plan in 2004. And the WDVA created a plan that enabled the fund to stay in a positive balance until 2016, which was about 2 to 3 years beyond what we had anticipated. So the department did a great job of reducing costs and extending it to 2016. So this will give you an idea of what the VTF cash balance has been since 2008 to 2016. And you can kind of get a feel for how the cash balance has been decreasing over years. And one of the main reasons it's been decreasing is our loan portfolio had been diminishing. And the reason it was diminishing was, well, I guess a number of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons was we could not compete with the private sector banks any longer, who were offering interest rates much lower than our loan program could offer. So refinancing started to happen. And in addition to just the gradual closing of mortgages through their terms, and that included, again, the mortgages and personal loan programs that we had established. So by the time we got to 2016, that's when we anticipated the insolvency of VTF and knew we had to look at other sources of income. So the declining loan program proceeds also prompted new legislation. So in 2013, Act 20, in the statutes 4503, 13P, we are now required to submit a Veterans Trust Fund report to the Joint Committee on Finance on even numbered years, describing the condition of the VTF. And I think Brian has an actual picture or a slide of the actual condition report as we turn that into Joint Finance Committee. But the VTF has changed so dramatically over the years that at this point, a condition report is much different than it was when it was with our loan programs, where it truly was a fund. At this point, we're looking at a VTF that really is a one appropriation, a sum sufficient appropriation that supplies all of the funds necessary. And I'll get into that a little bit further down. But it really is no longer a fund per se. It's more like a checking account that when we need money, we go to this appropriation that we currently have, and ask for additional funds or spend the funds that have been allocated by the legislature. So with the sale of the loan portfolio, a new source of revenue was needed to support the VTF. So the 2011 Act 32 gave the WDVA the authority to transfer all or part of the unencumbered balance of any of the homes' appropriations to the VTF. And so the transfers began in 2016, which is when essentially the VTF became insolvent. So it was necessary to get this additional fund source in place, which the legislature did. And you can see in 2016, $12 million was transferred, 17, $9 million, 2018, $12 million, and 2019, $14.5 million. And that is essentially the end of that program in 2019. And the reason it came to an end because the homes funding was not a sustainable source of revenue to support the VTF, especially now as we look at our homes and the census and the effects of COVID and labor shortages. So we had to look at, and the legislature had to look at other ways of supplementing the VTF, and a supplemental appropriation was approved. And that's now the current funding stream for the VTF. And that was provided in the 2019-21 biennial budget, Wisconsin Act 9. And it's called the General Fund Supplement to the Veterans Trust Fund. This is GPR. And the total appropriation is currently at $14.6 million. And like I said, it's a sum sufficient appropriation, which essentially means that it's a source of funds in the amount necessary to accomplish a specific purpose. So this last slide gives you an idea of all the different types of revenue sources and different ways that have been found to support the VTF and keep it functioning so that we can provide the great benefits to our veterans. You can see that dedicated revenues, there's a subtotal there, and that's where I was talking about the pre-World War II balance and the surtax, liquor tax, but that was $25 million. There was general fund appropriations that have been given to support the VTF, and those are total, as from 1947 to 2014. And this is not all encompassing. There are other funds that have been appropriated now in the general fund, but it does go through 2014 and shows that $35.5 million have been appropriated. Loans to the VTF, which have all been paid back at this point, total $37.3 million. And then the loan program transfers, and this is essentially what started our loan program, was the 1991 WIDA loan portfolio proceeds of $11 million. So it's a significant portion. It's difficult to start a loan program, but there has to be a significant source of revenues to even get a program like that started. And this is what started our loan program. So it was a total of $52 million for loan program transfers. And then you can see in the Veterans Homes transfers, there were a couple of smaller amounts that were transferred from our homes earlier in 2007 and 2009. But the major portion was in 2016 through 19, which I talked about earlier, to the tune of about $56 million. So in total, about $207 million has been spent. And of course, this is ongoing. When we talk about the Veterans Trust Fund, generally speaking, on average, we spend about $15 million per year in the Veterans Trust Fund, and that's been ongoing for quite a while now. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you this morning. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to Donald Placidi.
Right. Good morning, Michelle. You can hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming through great.
All right, perfect. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm going to provide an overview of the programs and services that are funded through the VTF that are administered by the Department of Veterans Affairs and specifically within inside of our division. So we can move right into the first few bureaus that we have. So within inside of our division is a Bureau of Programs and Services that has a makeup of two areas that are funded through the VTF. So we have our Veterans Assistance section. They are responsible for providing veterans with eligibility determinations, as well as answers and assistance for different referrals throughout the state of Wisconsin. And part of that is also our grants unit, which makes up the vast majority of the services and programs that are offered through that section. That area on average sees about 21,000 applications a year for different benefits and services that help veterans across the state that are funded through the VTF. Additionally, they do about 15,000 full determinations on whether they're eligible or not eligible throughout the course of a year. Really depends on the year, but that typically is the average. Our grants unit is the area that administers all grants and services to nonprofit organizations, individual veterans, or others across the state of Wisconsin. And then we also have our Milwaukee Claims Unit. They're responsible for filing claims on behalf of veterans with the USDVA, as well as working to help accredit some of our county veteran service officers, tribal veteran service officers, and then as well as our veteran service organizations, as well as maintaining accreditation for themselves to be able to file those claims on behalf of veterans. So next slide, please. So taking a look at this, you see some of our grants that we have within WDVA. So we have our Veterans Retraining Grant. This one is it's for recently unemployed or underemployed veterans. They can receive up to $3,000 per year for a maximum of 2 years if they have a financial need. The amount of the grant is really determined by the applicant's financial need as calculated by DVA. So we do have means tests for a lot of our grants, especially those for veterans who are falling at or below the poverty line. Then we also have our Veterans Education and Reimbursement Grant. This grant is used to reimburse veterans for education opportunities within certain systems inside the University of Wisconsin, private institutions, as well as technical colleges. This grant does work in conjunction with an opposite of the Wisconsin GI Bill. So those who may not be able to be eligible for the GI Bill in the state of Wisconsin, depending upon their level of financial need, they may qualify for the Veterans Education Reimbursement Grant. We do have our Assistance for Needy Veterans Grant as well. This grant has two different components to it. There's a healthcare grant that really helps with dental need, hearing, and vision for those veterans who may not have healthcare or meet the financial need to help support outside of that. And then we also have the Subsistence Aid, which helps with some emergency needs, such as just emergency payments. So that grant is, again, it's for those who are most in need, veterans who are in need, and we work in conjunction with a lot of our counties and local service providers to make sure that we're getting them all the benefits they can, and then DVA will help fill in on the back end to make sure that the veterans get the services that they're needed. We have a few other grants that really serve our nonprofit organizations. So our Veteran Employment Grant and our Veteran Entrepreneurship Grant are both funded out of the same appropriation. There's $500,000 annually allocated to that appropriation. And the Employment Grant is focused on incentivizing employers to hire veterans who have a disability, service-connected disability rating of 50% or more. For those that do hire a veteran with that service-connected disability rating, they can receive up to $5,000 for each veteran that they hire as long as funds are available. And then the Veteran Entrepreneurship Grant, that grant specifically is focused on 501c3 or 501c6 nonprofit organizations that provide training to veteran entrepreneurs, technical or business assistants. That grant this past fiscal year was awarded up to $400,000, or I'm sorry, $300,000. It was $400,000 the previous year. And the entrepreneurship grant has been administered to multiple organizations in the past. And with that, we do have one of our testimonials here today to provide some information on the Veterans Entrepreneurship Grant and how it benefited her program. So with us, we have Fanny Zai. She is currently going to be the soon-to-be owner of an organization that does bubble tea in the Appleton area. It's called Uni. And she did participate in a program at the Fox Valley Tech College, which is an innovator program focused on entrepreneurship, specifically around veterans. So Fanny, if you were here, if you could provide a quick summary of kind of your experience that you had serving and going through that program at Fox Valley Tech College.
Yeah, hi. Can everyone hear me? Okay,
Yes.
so my name is Fanny. I'm a disabled Army veteran and a small business owner. My store is opening next week in downtown Appleton, Wisconsin. As a veteran and a minority, I have always had a dream to open a business that promotes diversity, inclusion, and community service while serving food and drinks from my culture. I had this vision to bring a themed bubble tea shop to the Fox City area, but back then all I had was a general idea and the 6 pages of business plan that I drafted by using a template I found online. So I reached out to SCORE, which is the largest volunteer business mentor organization. I was lucky to meet my mentor, Paul Dozer, who is also a veteran. He introduced me to the Fox Valley Technical College Innovation Accelerator program for veterans, and he's one of the instructors. The program is tailored for veterans who wish to start or grow their businesses. I have to say that I was not able to be where I am right now without the program. So the program started with the basics of the business models, market research, accounting, all the way to fundings. My 6-page business plan became a 60-page plan with a 5-year financial forecast at the end of the program. It was praised by multiple loan institutions to be one of the best prepared small business plans they have never seen for years. And the program had prepared me for an elevator speech I have to give for the loan committees. They were impressed with my preparation and knowledge I have about the market and the business planning. The program is free, but the best part is a $1,000 startup grant. I used the grant to organize tasting events for marketing research and promotion. As someone who have no previous experience in business and no collateral, I was able to secure a $200,000 loan from WIBIC, stands for the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, which is also a SBA Veteran Business Outreach Center. The support of the Accelerator program does not stop there. The instructors, mentors, and consultants are with me every step of my business journey. They have connected me with countless resources and other community programs. Now my shop is set to open next week, and it has already become a hot topic in town. I cannot believe that all the professional help I receive is all free. The innovation program truly fulfilled its mission and its goals. It made my dream come true. And it also motivates me to use my business to help and inspire veterans like me. I'm also graduating from the UW Green-based Master of Social Worker program next week. So in the future, I wish to join organizations that help veterans, small business, and startups and make more veterans' dreams come true. Yep.
Fanny, thank you very much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on starting your business. The Veteran Entrepreneurship Grant does a lot throughout our organizations, and veteran ownership of businesses is a big economic driver for the state of Wisconsin. So this is a really important grant for us, and as you can tell, for Fanny as well. The next grant that I do want to talk about, and we do have another testimonial from for this grant, we have our nonprofit grant. This is the nonprofit grant is to serve 501c3 nonprofit organizations that provide financial assistance or other services to veterans and their dependents. The nonprofit program includes up to $250,000 annually with a max of $25,000 for each applicant. With us today is a multiple time recipient of the nonprofit grant award from the Wisconsin Veterans Network, otherwise known as VetsNet. We have Quentin Hatfield, the executive director. So Quentin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, commission members and secretaries. 4 out of the last 5 years, we have received the WDVA nonprofit grant, and I should talk a little bit about our model. Our model is not a direct service model. We collaborate with agencies all over the state and belong to resource groups across Wisconsin, from Wausau to Green Bay to Fox Valley and other places in Wisconsin, to develop relationships where we can connect veterans in need of resources quickly with local agencies who have those resources. Our objective is not to duplicate what's already being done across Wisconsin, but to help veterans and veteran families find resources they otherwise are unable to find. In the last 6 years, we've served a little over 2,500 veterans and veteran families. Often our work is done in conjunction with other VSOs, other nonprofits that are not in the veteran space, and city and county and local agencies who are in the human services business. And it's our job to know what they do and how to qualify our veteran client for their services so that we can quickly triage and meet a need. As examples, recently, working in conjunction with the VORP rep in Sheboygan, they had exhausted the state's emergency funds to keep a veteran who was homeless in hotel stay while they were working on placing that veteran in a home. And we were able to work with the VORP rep to continue the hotel stay out of our own emergency funds until they could get everything in place to get the veteran admitted for care. So oftentimes our work is work that's done with multiple agencies at the same time because we're dealing with multiple needs. A case in point that it's totally outside the veteran space for as far as veteran benefits was one which we worked on beginning in July of 2021 when a 23-year Air Force veteran retired, was seriously injured on his civilian job, traumatic brain injury, and his family thrown into quite a turmoil. And we were able to use some funding jointly developed with United Way here in Waukesha and Milwaukee counties to help that veteran wife pay her mortgage. The VFW state grant was used, thank you, Corey, to help us keep that heating system working through the winter because it went down. And so we were working with United Way, we were working with VFW and the County Veteran Service Officer to meet some families' needs that outside the scope of what are regular veteran benefits. So it's to help them connect to the benefits they are entitled to, help them connect to resources that may not be available in the veteran space. And so our job is to network with anyone who has a veteran interest and any kind of a nonprofit or government, city, local, state agency who can help people. Don, we have relied on this grant 4 out of the last 5 years, and we use it to do the kinds of things that I'm talking about.
All right. Quentin, thank you very much. And I appreciate all your efforts. And I know you'll continue to apply in the future. And I wish you luck on those applications. So, thank you, Quentin, for being here today. Again, those two grants specifically are really important to the veteran population here in Wisconsin, as they really do touch a number of veterans across really vast areas of the state of Wisconsin. And without these grants, it would be really hard for I believe the secretary said 17,000 nonprofits across the state to be able to put on the work and be able to do the things they do to support veterans. So moving on, we have a few other grants. So a lot of the remaining grants are really focused on the county veteran service organizations or our general veteran service organizations. We offer multiple grants to them as well. So we have a transportation grant that is administered annually. We have one for the county veteran service officers as well as the Disabled American Veterans Organization. They all receive an annual grant for transporting veterans for medical services for DAV at the VA, and as well as for the county transportation service grants for our CVSOs as well. Next slide, please. And then we have, obviously, and I know that Jim mentioned this in the previous slide, so I won't hammer this too home. We do fund a portion of the county veteran service officers through a grant on an annual basis. The same thing with our tribal veteran service officers, and then the VSO organizations as well. The American Legion, the VFW, and DAV are all eligible for different grants. Like I said, for the DAV, it's more the transportation, and the VFW and American Legion right now are the ones that apply for our VSO grant. The VSOs, in order for them to be eligible, they have to be conducting claim services out of the Milwaukee regional office. So there are some stipulations around that grant, but all of these grants that are administered out of this division really have a high impact on the veterans across Wisconsin. Next slide, please. This is just a little slide on the claims office. I'm not going to go deep into detail on this one. This kind of talks about what it goes into more detail when I summarized early on, but just some of the services that they provide, such as working through the disability compensation. They do pension claims. There's vocational rehab, healthcare benefits, education benefits, as well as burial benefits. So there's a lot of opportunity with some of the claims unit. And then they do work hand in hand with several CVSOs across the state, as we do hold several powers of attorney on file on behalf of the CVSOs. Next slide, please. The next one is going to focus on our Bureau of Health Services. We have two programs here that are both funded out of the VTF. The Veteran Housing Recovery Program is a hybrid fund. We've got some federal funding, but the maintenance, our facilities, operational costs to allow us to continue to operate this program is funded by VTF dollars. So we do have 3 facilities. We have a facility in Chippewa Falls, a facility in Green Bay, and a facility in Union Grove. Those are all being currently monitored by our contractor, Lutheran Social Services. We have just over 100 beds available across all 3 sites, and we're getting close to being full at all 3. I think 2 out of the 3 right now are full. There is training, education, counseling, rehabilitation services that are provided by LSS with the goal of helping these individual veterans obtain steady employment, affordable housing, and then with the ultimate goal of getting them into a permanent housing situation. So there's a lot of information here. This is a very complex program, but one that is much needed and does work in conjunction with another program of ours, which is our Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program. So if you could please move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So our Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program, the mission of them is to really connect veterans in Wisconsin, the community services. They do provide case management and support with a focus on treatment and recovery. The funds from the VTF that are used here are really used in an emergency situation for veterans, whether it comes to transportation, car repairs, rent, security deposits. We have clinicians on site that help provide assessments so that we can get veterans who may not be eligible for VA healthcare into a treatment program. You know, recently in the last few weeks, we just sent a veteran into a 90-day program that cost us over $22,000, but there was no other option for this veteran as they had no other treatment, and he finally agreed to go. And the Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program was able to get this veteran into the much needed treatment that they needed. The program does have some unique parts to it in the sense that we can serve currently serving National Guardmen and reserves who are eligible to receive under VORP. This program is very expansive. It has become one of the most important programs for the state, as it really has a strong focus on mental health and suicide prevention for veterans in the state of Wisconsin. These individuals across 11 regions serve some of the most at-risk veterans and encounter some of the most serious situations. And they really are our agency's connector to all of our community resources, like organizations like VetsNet in Milwaukee. You know, with that being said, you know, I do want to introduce another testimonial to come on for us. So we have one of our VORP coordinators that has one of the veterans who has benefited not only from the Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program, but has also benefited from the Veteran Housing and Recovery Program. We have James Larson. He served in the U.S. Army from 1986 to 1988 as a quartermaster specialized in chemical repair, receiving an honorable discharge. James has resided in Wisconsin since 2001. He was initially enrolled in our Veterans Outreach and Recovery Program in April of 2016. In November of 2020, he engaged with VORP again to enter the Veteran Housing and Recovery Program. With the assistance of both of those programs, James is now permanently housed in Green Bay, and he's here to share his story with us today. So I turn it over to Todd and James. Todd, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
My apologies. Go ahead and Jim can start again. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I do apologize. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I guess, you know, this is very uncomfortable for me, but it's also very, very important. I share a little bit of this with you for other veterans as well. This is not about me, but my discharge and separation from the military was honorable, but my transition back into civilian life in the community was anything but honorable. It was very disgraceful. Some of my mental health issues began to surface while in service, and I didn't know what to do with a lot of that. I struggled for many, many years with a lot of shame and guilt, and I spent a lot of time trying not to show that side of me to anybody. And along with that came a lot of self-medication. And over the course of time, developing a type of cycle, I guess would be safe to say, of mental health issues, self-medication, with very horrible, horrible results. I don't want to spend too much time on that, on the dark side, but I do need to touch on it a little bit, I guess, in order for where I'm at in life right now to make a little bit of sense. But there were many, many years, decades of homelessness for me, completely lost, no answers really, just really, really struggling. Multiple visits to just kind of talk a little bit about what a strain and burden I was on the community, on society, on the taxpayers. Yeah, multiple visits to mental health units, emergency rooms, drug and alcohol treatments, jails. Yeah, it was a cycle of that for me, and with really a bleak outlook. I believe it may have been around 2014, 2015. I was may have been a social worker at one of the hospitals, put me in contact with Cal Stammer from the Veterans Outreach and Recovery Program, and immediately I had a great rapport with him. He made me feel I trusted him. He made me feel safe, hopeful, and we started working together. And there was some brief success there, but I was still struggling, and found myself once again back in that same cycle. It wasn't until approximately, a year and a half ago, I believe it was, once again in the hospital, psychiatric unit, and this time I was connected with Cal again, and I was very, very, very fortunate. He was able to secure me a bed at the Veterans Housing and Recovery Program here in Green Bay. And what a wonderful, life-saving program that is, as well as VORP. But I needed that. I needed that in my life at that moment. I had really just about lost all hope, and they provided me with a safety net. That was one of my first feelings, was that I did have hope, and I did have some security. It was a place where I could just kind of take a breath and try to stop the madness. And that's what began to happen. I paid attention, and I listened to Todd Marks is here with me right now, and he's been instrumental in what's been going on in my life lately, providing me with different a whole gamut of opportunities. His advice and direction is paramount in my life today. I guess that's what I do. I attempt to do is I try to remain teachable and open to these suggestions and directions because they're working for me. I've been in this same apartment here. I do have stability today. I have an apartment that I can call my own. I've been here over a year. Pay my bills on time. I have a vehicle. It's registered. It's insured. I have no legal issues pending. Just a whole lot of hope and gratitude. And I was just trying to kind of hope I could paint a little picture of briefly. I know this is an ongoing situation going on here, and I really, really deeply appreciate all of you and your service. So I don't know if there's any much more I can say other than thank you. Thank you for your time.
James, thank you very much for your sharing your story with us here today. I really appreciate it. All right, the next slide, please. I think we touched on enough on the VHRP and VORP program for today, but they are two of the most important programs that we offer. And then finally, the last two slides I have are focused on the Bureau of Cemeteries and Memorial Services. Again, we do have portions of these programs that are funded through our Veteran Trust Fund. We operate 3 state veteran cemeteries across the state. We have one in Spooner, one in King, one in Union Grove. On an annual basis, those cemeteries provide over 1,500 services, with Union Grove topping near 1,100 to 1,300 on an annual basis, and one of the top 5 busiest state cemeteries in the country. And then the last slide that we have is our military funeral honors program. That program is funded by VTF. They do conduct roughly about 6,000 to 7,000 coordinations of military funeral honors across the state. And they work with a lot of our veteran service organizations to help ensure that those veterans who served our country are given the proper burial and honors when that time comes. So with that, I know we're short on time. I'll end my presentation there, and I will turn it over to Brian from the Department of Administration.
Thank you, Donald. Again, my name is Brian Puntke. I'm the State Budget Director here at the Department of Administration. I've been in this role for 3+ years now. Certainly also want to thank Secretaries Kohler and Blumenfeld for the opportunity to be part of this group here to share a little information today. It certainly is an impressive group of individuals and so interested in reading on your backgrounds and hearing from you today. So just wanted to say that out of the gate. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background here today. I know Jim touched on some of these items and Don a little bit as well, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of background from the state's perspective here too. The VTF revenue sources come from a couple places, as Don or Jim noted earlier, in terms of repayment of loans. DVA is made from its loan programs, federal grants, receipts from sales at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, and revenues from specialty license plates and interest earnings on that account. As Jim noted a bit as well, as a result of the diminished loan program over time and its ultimate sale in 2018, revenue to the trust fund had been on the decline for several years. However, I did want to note in fiscal 2021, the year that ended on June 30th of last year, the VTF did still generate revenue totaling about $573,000, a little bit more than that, from the sale of goods, interest earnings, and donations. As Jim noted a bit as well, as revenue to the VTF has declined, revenue transfers to it have been needed over the course of history to continue to support all those important programs you just heard from Don related to the fund for our veterans. The VTF had received a couple of GPR transfers, a little bit more and a little bit less than a decade ago in fiscals 12 and 14 that totaled $10.3 million. And as Jim also noted, over time, then the Veterans Home Appropriation had become a primary source of revenues for increasing transfers into the Veterans Trust Fund until fiscal 20. DVA still has the authority to administratively transfer surplus funds from the veterans' homes to it. And I just note a couple of the totals below there, the most recent of which was about $14.5 million in fiscal 19. However, beginning in fiscal 20, a couple of years ago now, transfers from the Veterans Home Appropriation to the Veterans Trust Fund have essentially been discontinued as a result of the GPR Sum Sufficient Appropriation, which I'll touch on in a short bit, that was created, recommended initially by Governor Evers when he first came into office, and authorized by the Wisconsin biennial budget in 2019, or otherwise known as Act 9. And you can see those figures at the bottom of the screen that began at about $12.7 million in GPR funding, and in its first year in fiscal 20 to be transferred, about $15.3 million last year at the end of fiscal 21, and the estimates for the current 2 years about $14.7 million this year and about $15.3 million estimated from the most recent budget bill for fiscal 23, the year which would begin next July 1. Next slide, please. As Jim had mentioned, I wanted to provide an update provided by our staff. I want to certainly thank them for their excellent work. Cynthia Dombrowski and Corey Steinbrink here at our department are the primary staff in the state budget office who work with our colleagues and friends at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And they put together this Veterans Trust Fund Condition Statement as recently as of last week. And what it shows here is a bit of a balance sheet, if you will. It shows the opening balance for fiscal 21 if you follow that column down. And that was the year that we most recently concluded to show that there was an opening balance of about $750,000, some revenues that came in, and then you see that GPR transfer of funds. And again, GPR transfer, for everyone out there, GPR stands for general purpose revenue. Those are state tax collections from income taxes, sales taxes, corporate taxes, some excise taxes, a few other smaller items that the governor and legislature have the authority to appropriate for various purposes, or nearly all purposes in state government if they so choose. They are, the word general meaning pretty wide open in terms of what they can support. And that total was about $15.3 million. If I'm still following, if everyone's still following in fiscal 21 in that column, you can see the available revenues totaled about $16.4 million. You look at the final estimated expenditures for last fiscal year of about $15.578 million. And you can see the year-end balance for the Veterans Trust Fund was about a little bit more than $850,000. And you can see, and you can follow that up if you don't mind doing so, into the fiscal 22, the year we are currently in, and now in our final months of, and you can follow that down. And here's where you have estimates going forward, certainly since we are in the current year here, of that opening balance, the anticipated estimated revenues there, the estimated GPR transfer for this year to see where the revenues will come in, and then the estimated expenditures from the Department of Veterans Affairs for the various programs supported here under the Veterans Trust Fund. If you follow that through, the year-ending balance is projected at a little bit more than $50,000 right now. That may still be end up a bit higher. And then you can see where the estimates are for fiscal 23 to follow those numbers through, starting with an estimated opening balance on July 1 of this summer, $51,000, an estimate on revenues, a little bit higher number for the estimated GPR transfer. Again, I'll come back to that. The overall estimated available revenues in the upcoming fiscal year, the second year of the biennium that starts on July 1, 2022 and ends on June 30th, 2023, of about $15.9 million. At this time, the estimated expenditures from DVA for the program supported by the Veterans Trust Fund are right about that figure. So there's a relatively small ending balance. And then the note at the bottom just notes that this does not include other revolving appropriations such as gifts and grants, veterans assistance programs, or museum sales. Next slide, please. A little bit of background here, and I know Jim touched on some of this, so I won't get into too much detail. In terms of just speaking about the viability of Veterans Trust Fund revenue sources, Jim noted the loan programs that had been in the place in the past. Quick notes here is that remaining loan portfolio was sold 4 years ago to the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. Jim noted the reason, so I noted that there as well. There were some specialty taxes once upon a time, a bit ago, notably here, back in the I guess a little bit more than a century ago, and then in the 1940s. But ultimately, one of those, the tax on liquor, was invalidated by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And then just noting here, as Jim noted a little bit as well, on the veterans' homes transfers. So those had been going on for a number of years here, not too long ago. And that cash balance at the veterans' home was being depleted heavily as a result of the transfers that were necessary to continue to support the Veterans Trust Fund. The ending balance in the homes, as you can see, we just picked a few years here to show you some information. It was about $47.7 million at the end of fiscal 17, or as of June 30th of 2017. Those revenues had fallen, or those balances, excuse me, the cash balance had fallen to about half of that at the end of fiscal 19, when the transfers from the home were discontinued. So what ended up happening here, after exhausting all the other options throughout the history, throughout its history, when Governor Evers came into office, and at the end of 2018, after his election, there was certainly many things that we ended up talking with him about as he put together his first biennial budget. And so one of those that I do remember well was in that very busy period of he was governor-elect and then soon to become governor, in putting together his budget, recognizing and with the the assistance of the state budget office, bringing up this issue to his attention. And at that time, there was a GPR appropriation, but it had a balance of zero in it. There was no base budget for it. And he thought it critical to do a couple of things. One was to provide a sum sufficient appropriation that would provide a transfer going forward to the Veterans Trust Fund with general purpose revenues. And again, a sum sufficient appropriation, as Jim mentioned earlier, is basically a whatever it takes appropriation. There are some of them in state government. There are not that many. Some of the other ones out there are for tax credits or for reciprocity for taxes for other states. There's a couple in the education sector, but there are not a lot of them, particularly with general purpose revenue. But the governor thought it critically important in his first budget to recommend that additional funds on a sum sufficient basis, on a whatever it takes basis from a revenue perspective, be established and transferred into the Veterans Trust Fund. We're very thrilled that the legislature did agree with that recommendation in that budget. And now that is there to stay. I would also note in the most recent budget, in the one that is in place right now, in the 21-23 budget, after that was established for fiscal years 20 and 21, the governor once again recommended additional funding, about a little bit more than $30 million, about a little bit more than 15 million in each of the last 2 years, the current one we're in and the one we're going forward. And again, the legislature agreed with that once again, to have that base funding going forward to transfer to the Veterans Trust Fund to ensure support for those critical programs you've heard about already. My quick note on the bottom of the slide, though, is I do want to note that most appropriations administered by the Department of Veterans Affairs are still annual or biennial appropriations that have a specific level of expenditure authority that cannot be exceeded. So those are in place, but the revenues from the general purpose fund have been established and now have been in place for 4 years. Next slide, please. A couple of quick final notes here on the Veterans Trust Fund. There are also 5 other appropriations with dedicated funding sources. While these are technically trust funds, revenues for budgetary projection purposes, they are not included since these revenues are not available to pay for other fund expenses. And those examples include those 5 items on the slide here: fees for single room housing, occupancy housing, transition housing, or for other house assistance in veterans programs, federal per diem payments for veterans participating in the Veterans Assistance Program, sales at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, gifts and bequests for the benefit of Wisconsin veterans and their dependents, and gifts and bequests in its name for the benefit of the Wisconsin veterans, although they're not part of that. Next slide, please. Just overview here, not including the 5 appropriations with dedicated funding, the 21-23 biennial budget that we are now in has authorized total expenditures of about $19.5 million from the VTF this year, and about 19.5, a little bit less than that in fiscal 23. So those are the authorized total expenditures for those appropriations overall to support if necessary. Actual VTF expenditures, not including the 5 appropriations with the dedicated funding, were about $15.6 million last year. The bottom is a summary of some of the programs you've already heard about, so I won't go through them in detail. Next slide, please. And I will not go through all the appropriations here in detail this morning, but wanted to provide this information for the commission to look at as it sees fit, to follow up any questions you may have for Jim or Don or I, and just to have them available to you. Again, once again, thank you for the opportunity to present this information to you today, and look forward to hopefully answering any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you to all three of our panelists and speakers, as well as what wonderful testimonials that we received from our special guests that we had. So in order to move forward, it is time for those questions that you may all have. A few were posted in the chat, so I will begin there. But then I do want others to either raise their hand or be sure that they are posting your questions. And so we will begin with the first question that came in. And is there a place that we can quickly find information about what prompted creation of the Veteran Trust Fund in 1961? So that question likely would go to Jim, but as well, I do want to highlight that there is a history paper of the Veterans Trust Fund in the information packet that did go out to you last week. So some nice leisurely reading there for you as well. Plus it was a lot of information and wonderful information that we just received here to absorb. So another way for you to absorb that information. But with that, I will pause to see if Jim, if you want to take that question and expand on that in any way.
Yes, thank you. So essentially what happened is, in the research that I found, that, you know, in looking at all the different options that the VTF has had over the years to fund it, people were looking for a sustainable fund, you know, in a way that, you know, we could establish this as a permanent fund and get permanent funding. So in 1961, that's what that effort was. I guess that was the conclusion they were looking for, is to provide something much more permanent rather than an annual appropriation that changed constantly, although that continued to happen to some degree. In 1961, the effort was to make it a much more permanent and sustainable fund source.
Thank you for providing that response. And our next question was posted for Fanny, but I believe our guests did jump off. So we will follow and try and get the information and response gathered for everybody, likely through Donnie. But Donnie, if you're able to answer this in any way, having worked with Franny and been in contact, that'd be great. Congratulations went to her on the grant and opening of the business. And when she mentioned working through multiple organizations to obtain the grant, the comment that we were seeking was anything that she could comment on regarding the difficulty or lack thereof in connecting with those different organizations, and if you know what resources she used to begin the first steps of the journey, any personal research or word of mouth, if you have any background and can expand on that in her absence. Otherwise, you know, if we're able to follow.
Yeah, we'll follow up with her. She's probably best to answer all those questions as she went through it. I mean, I've talked to her, but I don't have enough background to answer fully. So I'll defer.
Great, thank you. And we will disseminate that information to the group as a whole in following those open meeting practices there. And then a comment from the Secretary Kohler here, and when we were hearing about the nonprofits. So 1,700 veterans supporting nonprofits in Wisconsin, a good note there and point of reference with that information. And then we also have a comment from Jason here. Loan and mortgage interest rates are rising rapidly, and our state government has a budget surplus. There is a dire housing shortage in our state. Could a loan program for veterans be viable again if interest rates climb high enough? And if so, could funding be requested from the general fund and WHEDA, 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 to restart the home loan program to target veterans housing for low income veterans under 60% of CMI and workforce housing for veterans at 60% to 120% of CMI, meaning counting median income. So that's one question. And could a restarted loan program diversify the income for the Veterans Trust Fund going forward while helping veterans obtain housing in Wisconsin? As money may not always be available for GPR transfers at high enough levels in future budget years beyond the current budget. So who wants to take that question of the three of you, or maybe you share the question as well? And for the audience, if someone would define WIDA as well, I can do most of it, but I'm one word short, so I'll leave it to one of the three of you.
I guess I can talk a little bit about the loan program. The loan program requires a substantial input of money to get it started. And whether that money is available or not, that's more Brian's area than mine, for the statewide use of any surplus or excess funds. It's a difficult program to maintain. It requires resources on our part to maintain it. And these are not excuses, just reality. And Dodd-Frank is a new federal legislation that really makes it difficult for someone like a state agency to have a loan program. The banking industry is much more fluent in that area and able to, meet the needs of that legislation. We are not. Not to say that it's impossible to do. I think everything should always be on the table and considered, and we've kind of done that in the past. And I think this governor has done a great job of providing us with sustainable funding for now and for the future. But yeah, I guess that would be my comment on that question.
Thank you, Jim. Brian, did you want to also add information?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jim, for that response as well. Per the question with regards to the state surplus, yes, the state has a significant surplus as of now. And I think as this commission moves forward, I think there's a great opportunity to talk about some of those options going forward. Everything we look at now for the next go round would be in the 23-25 biennial budget. The legislature has commenced its activity for the current year and the current session. But as this commission moves forward, I think those discussions would be very helpful to bring recommendations, as was noted earlier on, to the governor for consideration this fall. But yes, the state's current balances are as high as they've been. From a general purpose revenue perspective, one never knows where things will go, but as of right now, the state is in strong fiscal condition.
Thank you. So, and thank you, Secretary Designee Blumenfeld, Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. There was the word I was missing, authority. So everyone knows that what is being referred to with WIDA. What other questions? Raise your hand or go ahead and chat those in the chat box. But Nathan, here, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Some of the key words I was hearing here from with Jim and Brian, they were talking about the VTF and talking about a sustainable income. I'm just kind of wondering, with the sustainable income, I heard permanent, looking for some kind of permanent fund sources. What's been kind of the past, not to reinvent the wheel here, but what were some of the past discussions on this to look at that and expand a little bit in those areas?
Guess I'll try here, Nathan. More recent past, from my perspective, is the governor's recommendation a couple of years ago to establish a sum sufficient revenue source from general purpose revenues to ensure that those funds are transferred as needed to cover expenses related to the Veterans Trust Funds and no longer be reliant on transfers from the veterans' homes. I would note that appropriation that has been set aside here is now base funded. Certainly anything can happen down the road, but it is a strong, I would argue, fund available that is seldom established in state government for such purposes. One never knows, of course, but it is really something that is set to go forward. And I really want to note the importance of it being, if you will, in the base. So when the next budget commences, those biennial budget discussions for the fiscal 24 and 25, that the base dollars of whatever they are, whether it's about 15 million, $15.5 million, whatever they are there from a starting point perspective, as opposed to starting from zero. So I think we're in a strong position going forward, and hopefully the state's financial condition continues to be along the same lines. I don't know if Jim wants to comment on any other history that he's more familiar with as well.
Right. So about 10 years ago, actually, when I was brought into the department, one of the first things that was required for me was the Joint Finance Committee was asking for a solvency plan from the department. Solvency was a very big word that was being used quite often in the community, in the veterans community, as far as the Veterans Trust Fund was concerned. And what we did was put together a paper that established really the history, kind of the things that we went over today, and looked at some options that might be viable for the legislature and the governor's office to look at. And of course, the GPR was, in our eyes, and I think certainly this governor's eyes, was the most viable, sustaining, permanent fund source that could be used going forward. And we, of course, were 100% on board. So yeah, the solvency issue has been resolved. We don't use that word anymore. And as Brian has said, it's as permanent as can be, as permanent as this Veterans Trust Fund has ever been funded is currently what we have.
Thank you, Brian and Jim, for that response. And Donnie, I believe this question will go to you. Greg Dufek posted in the chat, education grants and the needy veteran grant. Do you have numbers on use of these grants, funding amount, applications, remaining funds, or carryover amounts?
We do, and I think that those numbers I can send over to the commission, that we have reporting on that. We keep track of that on an annual basis, but both the veterans, the vet ed grant and the healthcare grant, as well as Subsistence Aid, are pretty underutilized, Greg. They have some significant room for opportunity for improvement. But of course, improvements for that will need to be made through statutory and code changes. And we can work with the panel to show you guys kind of what those look like. And you could read through the statute and code and see there's some restrictive language in there, but there's room to open those up without a doubt.
Great, thank you. So we'll follow up with additional information in regards to that. Are there other questions from our commission members? Go ahead, Alabelle.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions, and perhaps some of them might be suggestions. One of them, I believe our legal counsel may be on here. And in an abundance of caution, I did receive an email from Wisconsin Eye, which is televising this live, and they wanted me to share it. So I'm not sure, since I'm on the commission, whether that would be an ethical violation or not. That would be the question that I have, and I may not be the only one that got that email from Wisconsin Eye. The other entity that has not been discussed here today, and perhaps it will be in future meetings, is that DWD has an Office of Veteran Employment Services, which is a quasi state government agency. It is technically a state agency, but the funding comes from DOL vets, and they run the Levers and DBOPs program, which might be nice background for some of the commission members to know. And finally, the last comment I have is, usually when I go to a legislator's town hall, before I verbally make some points, I usually submit a statement of some type. So I was thinking perhaps DAV represents injured and ill veterans. So I was thinking perhaps of some of the recommendations we might have in that representation to submit a statement to the commission. Here's some suggestions, recommendations we have. I guess my question on this would be, would that be appropriate? So with that, I laid a lot of information out. I don't know if anyone wants to attempt to answer any of those points that are raised.
Well, thank you for those questions. First, let's see if our general counsel is able to answer the first one. It is a bit off the cuff type situation and sharing that email. So we'll just see if he is available and able to answer that. Chad Copeland, if you are available.
So my understanding is that the Wisconsin Eye has asked one of the committee members for a statement. Is that correct?
Not quite. They wanted me to share it. So, which I normally would do because I do a lot of social media. I just didn't know if since I'm on a committee, would it be appropriate for me to share their link?
To share a website link?
Yeah, share the link to the live stream and or the recording of the commission meeting.
I see no concerns with that whatsoever. Unless Michelle, you had a concern that you would want to run this past DOA legal counsel, I don't see that as problematic at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. And then as to your other questions, I'm going to allow the commission co-chairs to ponder because it's based on recommendations that the commission will develop over time, I think, as I understand your question, and how to send a letter and convey that information, and it sounds like gather support for that. So let me allow the co-chairs to ponder that question, to circle back on strategy for next, because it sounds like a longer term question if I have understood it accordingly. Would that be acceptable?
It's acceptable to me. I guess generally it's the do's and don'ts. And that would fall under that category. So if they could get back to me with what I propose, it would be appreciated. And also, there is one program that pertains to disabled veterans. It's a disabled veteran-owned business program, which is administered from DOA. And I would like, if it's okay with Secretary Designee Blumenfeld, to maybe get together with you and discuss this program in greater detail.
Okay, noted. A request for a meeting for conversation. So we'll document that as well, and can circle back on that request. In regards to there's a chat comment from Rock Larson as part of the solvency plan restrictions were implemented in the grant programs that Greg was asking about, just to wrap that comment up. And we do have just about 7 minutes remaining in our meeting. So we're going to grab these last two questions. First, Nate Millsap, and then we'll go to Scott Schroeder. Nate, if you'd go ahead.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. So Donald, Jim, probably, or Brian. So we heard today about success stories. We heard about the programs. What we did not hear are shortcomings in the programs. And I'm very much interested, and if you don't know today, certainly we can follow in the future, but I'm very much interested in understanding the rejection rate. You know, programs for veterans are about being accessible to the veterans in those organizations. And I am very much interested in understanding our first pass success rate in reaching those organizations and them reaching back in to understand the efficiency. And so are the limitations that do exist, are they due to funding, or are they due to complication in the program, the design, the bureaucracy of the program itself?
Thanks for that, Nate. Do either of the three of you want to make an initial comment on that question?
Yeah, I can talk very briefly. I think, Nate, for some of the programs like VORP and VHRP, I believe there's another meeting in the future that's really focused on mental health and homelessness. And I think that'll be a good opportunity for us to kind of dig a little deeper into that. And if there's specific data or parameters that you want me to cover during that briefing, let me know. If they can give me a heads up, and I'll make sure I get that information to you. I think most of the program service I had, there's definitely dedicated time throughout the commission over the next several months for us to kind of touch deep on some of those shortcomings. I would say though, in short, it's probably a little bit of mix of both between funding and then also statutory and code language that hinders that. And then there's also just, your general limitations with the outreach and stuff that we have to do. So, but we can talk in depth a little bit longer and we can go from there. I don't know if Jim and Brian want to add to that.
Not hearing anything. And just to add to Nate's comment, Yolanda wanted to ask, is there a report of usage in all Wisconsin counties? So I think if that applies to your future conversations, and if you can include that information then. And then Scott Schultz, sorry, if you go ahead with your question there.
Really quickly, and this is going to kind of echo in a way, Nate, and the commission members are going to get tired of me asking this question in all of our meetings. The recovery veteran, the testimonial caught my ear right away that it sounded almost as happenstance that he fell into that program. Just that the right person sent him at the right time. And I'm going to be always pounding, I guess, what's done for outreach and what are we doing to, I don't know that these programs exist or a lot of them exist. And I think that's going to be something I'm going to want to explore as this whole process continues, that the connections might not be there and we might have greater success with some of those connections.
Yep, Scott, and I can share with you that I agree with you that there's definitely a lot of there's still gaps and there's areas that still aren't aware of all the programs we do. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but last biennial budget, we were given an extra $100,000 as part of the Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program to allow us to conduct more marketing and outreach to underserved vets and underserved geographical areas of the state of Wisconsin. And we started that initiative last month, and we started, I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen them, but we've had those mental health combating veteran suicide forums that we're doing across the state of Wisconsin. They're in 6 different locations scattered throughout the state to try to get awareness out. And part of that is using our Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program. Again, like I think when we get to that session on mental health and our outreach efforts, I can really go into some in-depth detail and kind of what those efforts look like and who we're working with to help get the word out.
Great, thank you.
Great, and thank you, Donald, for that response. And there is agreement in the chat, Nate Millsap displaying that agreement. So with that, it is time to begin to wrap our meeting. We are just upon the 11 o'clock hour. So as a reminder, meeting number 2 will be May 24th of actually 2022 there. So we'll correct that. And we will be meeting via Zoom at 9 o'clock, and our subject will be long-term care. Another reminder that we do have that email box, veteranopportunity@wisconsin.gov, for you to share questions or any meeting concerns or items there, even attendance issues that you may have at that email box. And then another reminder about the website, dva.wi.gov /about WDVA /Blue Ribbon Commission. You'll find agendas and postings of information as they are available. So you can go there and keep monitoring that site. And then my email address is there if you have feedback about the actual meeting, the flow, the feel, mispronunciation of names, please reach out and let me know. I'd love to get any feedback that you have as it relates to the facilitation of the meetings as well. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Secretary Kohler for any final comments and our adjournment.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you again to everyone for your participation today. It's a great start for this commission. I know that it was a lot of information in a short period of time, I hope you do have some time to take a look at the package that was sent last week. That includes the information paper. It's a good read on the history of funding for WDVA programs. I also want to note, I have on my calendar that our next meeting is on May 25th. So we will work that out. So we'll double check and get the accurate information out. But again, thank you, everyone.
And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, goodbye.